Hello and welcome to this Learn Scratch tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be making a clone of a really old game called Blockade. It's a two-person game and it's like a two-person version of Scratch basically. The idea is you keep moving around the screen, avoiding crashing into your own or your opponent's snake. There we go. And it's every time you crash, then your opponent gets a point, and the first person to 9 points wins. Well, that's how I've got mine set up anyway. So there you go, nice and simple, but really fun. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is create yourself a new Scratch project, and once you've done that, get rid of Scratch the Cat, go to Paint, and then let's click on Square, and we'll paint ourselves our first player. When you're drawing the square, hold Shift so that it forces it to be a square, and do it about that sort of size. And we'll just zoom in a bit and then make sure that your square is in the center there. Good. Also, if you've got an outline on yours, then click on there, click here and make sure that you set your outline to 0. If it's got an outline like that, that's no good. We want it to be 0. And there you go. So there's your player sprite, nice and simple. So let's get our player coded. Let's drag them over there. And we want the player to start over here at the start of each round. So the way we do that is we'll set it up and we'll say, okay, we know we're going to receive a message called start the round because each round we'll send that message. So at the start of each round, we need to move the player up to here. And we can use the go to, here we go. And it's already populated in the go-to, the sprite's current position around there. But what we want to do is, because we want this sprite and this player 2 sprite moving on the same grid, then we need to set these to be multiples of 20, the nearest one. So instead of minus 166, it'll be minus 160. And instead of 112, let's go 120. There you go. And it'll move it slightly to a different position, but that's okay. And you'll see why in a minute. So at the start of the round, we just go to there, and we also point him, and we need to have him pointing this way to start, because he's going to move that way. So pointing direction, and we'll just make sure he's pointing over that way, which is good. Okay, brilliant. And then what we do is we need to set up his movement, his turning. And all we're going to do is, after we started the round, we pointed him in the right direction, we'll just put him in a loop that constantly checks to see if you're pressing the one of the keys for him to move, and if you are, then we'll just turn him to face in the right direction that you've pressed. So do it forever, and he can move, well, he can either face up, down, left, or right. So we're going to need 4 of those. And let me go to sensing, and for player 1, we're going to use standard WASD kind of gamer keys. So W will be for up, S will be for down. Oops, let's stop that there. A will be for left, and D will be for right. There you go, WASD, that'll be player 1. We'll change this for player 2. And then all we do is we use the pointing direction for each of these. Drag, 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 drag. There we go. And we just need to make sure that it matches. So that's going to be up. S is down, so that's going to be down. A is going to be left. And D is going to be right. Good, that's okay. Cool, brilliant. So now when that route starts, every time you press W, A, S, or D, it's going to face him in the right direction. Obviously, he's a square, so you can't see that he's turning directions at the moment, but just believe me when I say that he is. Good, so that player 1 is all set up there, ready to go. And now what we need to do is we need to get the player moving. Now, the only way to make it fair in this game is to have all of the both players moving at exactly the same time. Otherwise, one could have an advantage if they move second. So the way that we do that is we use a kind of clock technique where we set up a message called move. There we go, move. And every half a second or something, we broadcast this message of move to all of the players. Now, what does the player need to do to move? Well, actually, it's really simple. because we're changing his direction there, all we need to say is move 10 steps. And that way, every time, so we can press right, there we go. Every time the move is broadcast, he's going to move 10 to 20 steps in whatever direction he's facing. In fact, if I click that now and then start clicking, you can see that if I hold down, he's going to start moving in the right direction because I'm using these keys. Good. So that's like that. And yeah, that's all okay. Start round move. So what we can also do now is we need to get that moving automatically when the round starts. Now we don't want either player to be in charge of the round, so we have the game itself to be in charge. And I always use the stage as kind of the game master. So the stage is going to be in charge. So we can say here, okay, when I receive start round, what we'll do is we will set up a little clicking clock. And really, really simple, actually. All it does is you just say, okay, wait, whatever it is, 0.5 seconds or something, and then we'll just broadcast this move. There we go. So now, if we broadcast start round, there we go. It moves every sort of whatever it is, every 10 seconds. What we'll do here is I'll just do when start clicked, let's broadcast start round as well, so you can see that now. There we go, start. There we go. So now when the game starts, my player, he can move, the first player moves wherever he wants, and it's about 0.5 seconds. I'll change that to a smaller number in a bit, so it moves a bit quicker because that's a bit too easy. There you go. So the player's popping around just like that. Brilliant. Good. So that's the first part of it set up. And now what we need to do is we need to get the player leaving a little trail, a little snake trail behind him as he goes. So how do we do that? Well, we need to use the extensions. So we click down on the extensions and we use the pen extension. And at the start, for the stage, the only pen the stage has got is the erase all. And that's actually really useful. We'll put the erase all there at the start and in the start round. And all that means is that anything that has been drawn on the stage will be gotten rid of. And let's just change our sprite one to player one as well. Player one, so we know who that is. Good. Okay, good. So now what we need to do is every time he moves, we need him to just leave a copy of himself on the floor. So the way we do that, really, really simple, is we just stamp before we move. And all that will do is just do a copy of the player whenever they move. There you go. You can see it working really, really well, just stamping along as we go. Good, 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 good. Now, what we want it to do, though, is our player is just a tiny bit too big. We want a little space in between. We don't want a solid line. And the reason being is if we have a solid line, it's going to interfere with the way in which we check to see if you've won or not. So what we really want is something like that, where, there we go. That's good. I don't know why the players suddenly moved a bit, but let's have a look. Here we go. Might need to move him slightly up, but that's about it. Let's just make him a bit smaller. I should go to 90. There we go. Yeah, that's more like it. Good. Good. Brilliant. So now we've got the player moving, and we've got him moving around the place. Now we want to do is we want to get it so that the player, if the player is touching his own tail, or he's touching the wall, then they lose a point and we go to the next round. Well, in order to do that, we're going to need a few things. First of all, we're going to need some scores. So we need to create some scores, and we're going to keep track of the scores using variables, because variables, what they can do is you can store data in them. So they're really, really useful, and you can change the data and you can check what's in there. So player one variable is going to store the player one score. Player two variable is going to store the player two score, and we'll just move them out of the way for the moment. Now at the start of the game, we want player one and player two scores to be 0. So let's go back to the stage, who is the game master, and the game master at the start of the game can say, okay, hang on a minute. There you go. Let's start your scores with 0. So here's player one, and he's constantly moving. But what we need to do is every time he moves, we need to check if he's crashed into the wall or his tail or any of the tails. So the way that we do that is we can use an if statement. And we've got two kind of situations really where things could go wrong. Either he's touching purple, in which case we know he's crashed into himself, or he's touching the edge. So we need to keep account of both of those. And the way we can do that is with using this touching color. And we want it to be purple. It needs to be exactly the right color. So we'll click on the eyedropper tool. We'll go over here. We'll select purple. And now it's saying, okay, if it's touching this kind of lilac-y purple color, or if it's touching the edge, which will be in this top one here, touching the edge. So if either it's touching purple or it's touching the edge, then we know that it's round over. So if it's the round over, we need to give the other player an extra point. Change player 2 scores by 1. And then we also need to broadcast the end of the round. So let's go. Here we go. And we'll go start round, because what that will do is it will just move us on to the next round. Good, so move along. If it's touching either of those two, we'll just start the next round. So let's see if that works. There we go. So no, move up, and there you can see it now. Player 1 still got 0, but now player 2, who doesn't exist, has got 1 point. There you go, and it's going up to 2. Good, 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 good. That's fine. And now what we can also do is we'll set up our player 2. So how do we set up player 2? Well, player 2 is going to be pretty much a clone of player 1, but with a few little differences. So we can just right click on player 1, duplicate player 1. It's automatically changed to player 2, which is good. Now player 2, which is this one here, he needs to start down this area there. So player 2 is probably, if we go to looks, motion, let's go 160. Yes, we'll just do the opposite of the other one, really. Let's go 160 and then minus 120. There we go. Good. So now, hopefully, there we go. Look at that. Ooh, there we go. Now, there you go. It's just about right to start. Couple of issues. First of all is they start straight away rather than having a bit of a gap. And also is player 2 is going the wrong way. So we need to click on the direction, change him over to that direction. And now you'll see the next problem, which is they're both coded to move with the WASD keys, which is no good. So what we'll do here is we'll just change that. So actually a lot easier with player 2, because it's just going to be up, down, up, ooh, where's that at? Left, right. Yeah, there we go. Good. So that one's now got independent controls. Also is if player 2 crashes, we want to give player 1 a point. Otherwise, that's sort of cheating a bit. And let's just try that now and let's see what happens. Here we go. So you can see, there we go. So yep, so player 2 and player 1 are moving completely independently. Let's just make sure that player 2, if they crash, player 1 gets a point. Brilliant. Good. There we go. So the game's almost done. All we need to do now is check to see if they've got, either of the players has got 9 points. And if they do, then we'll give them, we'll put on the game over screen and tell them who's won. So again, the stage is going to be in control of all that because we don't trust the players. So all we need to do now is let's create ourselves a new backdrop. Now this white one is going to be the game screen. So let's just call that game screen. There we are. And we need 2 more backdrops. So let's just, we'll use paint to paint these. And game over. There we are. Make that a bit bigger. Let's change this to the retro pixel style one. Good. And then we'll put who's won. So with this particular one, we'll just do player 1 wins. Player 1 wins. Good. Player 1 wins. There you go. And that's the player 1 wins backdrop. Player 1 wins. So that's the player 1 wins backdrop. We'll duplicate that, change that to player 2, and change that to player 2 wins. Good. So now we've got three backdrops. We've got the game screen, player 1 wins, and the player 2 wins. So what have we got to do to make those appear? Well, actually, it's really, really simple. All we do is at the start of any round, we check at the very start of the round to see if either of those players have actually won. So how do we do that? Well, we're just going to check. We're going to use another OR, and we just check to see if either of those players' points matches 9. So if player 1's score is 9, or if player 2's score is 9, then we will broadcast game over. Game over. Oops. Broadcast game over. A new message. Game over. There we go. Good. Game over. Good. And we'll put that right there at the start. So at the start of every round, it just checks to see if it's game over. In fact, actually, I'll put that there because that'll help me. Good. So we erase all the clones, and then we'll do this game over there. And what's actually going to happen is when we receive the game over, the reason we've done this broadcast is because then we can just decide on who's won. So now what we do is we say, okay, when we receive game over, if player 1's score is 9, then we know that it's player 1 that's won. So we'll change the backdrop to player 1 wins. If it's game over and player 1 hasn't got 9 points, then we know that it must be player 2 who's won. So we'll change it to there, which is good. All done. And then we'll just, in fact, do we need to do anything else there? No, we can just stop all, yeah. Once that's done, we'll just stop all other scripts in this sprite. Stop other scripts in this sprite. So that will just stop all the other scripts once that's changed over. We also need to make sure as well at the very start of the game that we set the backdrop to the game screen, otherwise that's a bit of a bug. So we need to say, okay, at the very start of this game, let's set the backdrop to the game screen. Otherwise, the second time you play it, it'll be stuck on the game over screen. And also is we need to make sure that when we get the game over, we hide both of the players. So we just say, okay, for player 1, let's have a look. Here we go. When I receive game over, we will hide, so we don't show them. Obviously, if we've hidden them at the end of the game, then we're going to need to say, okay, when we receive start round, we'll show. Otherwise, that can go wrong. And we'll do the same for player 2. So when I receive game over, let's hide. And at the start of the round, let's show, which is good. So we're almost there. The only thing we need to do now, and the only last thing to do, is if you notice on my game here, when you ran the game, it shows their scores at the start of each round, and then the score disappears. So we need to get that happening as well. And that's actually really quite simple to do. All we do is, let's move player 1's score there. Just double click on it. If you double click on it, it changes to the other version of the score. There's player 2. And then what we do is in the stage, click on the stage, and we use the stage to control whether or not to show it. So we go down to variables, and here you've got these options of show and hide the player variable, which is good. So they only really show right at the start of the round. So what we do is we show player 1's variable, show player, oh gosh, what have I done there? Oh, cancel. I don't know what I've done there. Show player 2, something went crazy then. So at the start of each round, we show player 1's and 2's variable, and then we wait a couple of seconds so people can see the score, let's say 2, and then we hide that score variable, because you don't need to see that after the first couple of seconds. Hide the player 1, hide player 2. There we go. So that hopefully now, if we click start, there you go, shows it for 2 seconds, then they hide, and then the game begins. And that's it really, that's the entire game. You can see that works fine. I'll just have to debug it, let's just check. While you are debugging it, at the moment, obviously normally I set it to 9, 9, and 9 here for 9 lives, but while I'm debugging it, let's just set it to 2. So that I don't have to go all the way up to 9 to check if it works. So let's have a look. So here we go. Let's just crash player 2. Player 2 crashes, player 1 gets a point. There we go. Let's do that again. Player 2 crashes again, player 1 gets a point. Good. And then player 1 wins. Good. And let's also try that as well. Let's test that on the other one. Player 1 crashes. Yeah, player 2 gets a point. Let's try player 1 crashing into a wall. Player 2 gets a point. And now it should say player 2 wins. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So that's the game. In terms of improvements, you could do some sound effects and put some music in there. That would be really good. So that'd be a good idea. But that's pretty much it, really. Or you can obviously change the colors and things like that if you want to, and add a start screen if you want. But that's it. Nice, quick and easy, little fun 2-player game tutorial, something to do. If you do like the tutorial, then please do like and subscribe. And if you have any requests or anything, then please pop a comment on YouTube. Okay, thank you very much, and good luck scratching.